UFC 266, Volkanovski versus Ortega. Welcome to another UFC prediction and analysis video by yours truly here at Boxing MMA Picks. He goes by the name of Zan. I go by the name of Harris. As usual, we're giving you our fight-by-fight breakdown, fight-by-fight analysis, specifically from the betting perspective, letting you know which fights are worth the value, which fights you want to avoid, perhaps which underdog has the best shot at winning. And if you stick around to the end of the video, you may even get a little bit of parlay action as well. As usual, subscribe to the channel. Make sure you hit the thumbs up, the notification bell as well, so you know when we do come out with our prediction videos. And most importantly, participate in the comments. We definitely appreciate that. For this UFC 266 Volkanovski versus Ortega pay-per-view, in our usual fashion, we are going to start with the prelims. We do have a pretty busy prelims for this one. We have 9 fights on the prelims, whereas we only have 5 fights on the main card. So of course, we are going to get started with fight number 1 of the prelims, and we're starting with Jonathan Pearce taking on Omar Moraes. I'm going to break this fight down first. Omar Moraes, I mean, he beat Shane Young back in March. Pretty solid overall fighter, getting up there in age a bit. I mean, 35 years old at this point, but still looks pretty good. Introduced as a striker, his only loss, you see his record there at 11-1. His only loss was to Giga Chikadze, so can't be too mad at that. A pretty patient approach on the feet. He will go through that sort of feeling out process with his opponents. Uses the jab, uses the calf kick, good in and out movement, the fakes, the feints, doing all of those things to try to find, of course. Good timing to that point, good counter striker to that point, and also pretty good clinch, good takedowns as well. Doesn't really land it too often. You see they're only 0.68 per fight, but 100% accuracy from the takedown side of things, 87% defense to go with it as well. So again, you're looking at a pretty good overall fighter with no glaring weakness to his game. Jonathan Pearce, on the other hand, he beat Kai Kamaka. That was back in November of last year. Pretty bouncy on the feet, kind of fights tall, uses his reach, doesn't necessarily have the reach in the arm length, but fights tall as a fighter, uses front kicks, push kicks if he's facing pressure. Pretty decent boxing. Wouldn't say it's amazing, but he's definitely willing to engage. Showed some solid wrestling as well, not only on Dana White Contender Series, but also in that Kai Kamaka fight as well. Really small sample size, but I mean, we see how his numbers look at this point, almost 6 takedowns per fight, 60% accuracy. That kind of tells you that he's going for it, if nothing else, again, because it is a small sample size. Fights moving back naturally, but he can very much keep it in the pocket, close distance as well. Bit of a predictable jab, but he will use it, and it does work. And in that Kai Kamaka match, he did show a little bit more diverse striking. Showed that he had improved on the feet, in my opinion. And that improvement in his striking makes the fight very interesting. I think Moraes should have the better striking. I think Pearce would think that his advantage is on the ground. But in my opinion, Omar Moraes just too solid. Good takedown defense. I think that'll allow him to keep the fight on the feet. And like I said, I think he has the advantage in the striking. I can see why the fight is close, only a -150 on the side of Moraes. But I think, again, Moraes too solid of an overall fighter. I think he keeps it on the feet, and I think he gets the job done today.
Yeah, for me, this is a hard fight, man, because when I look at Jonathan Pearce, he's the type of guy, as you mentioned, his takedowns, and he's the type of guy that he has ridiculous cardio, and those guys are always a problem. This guy does not get tired, and as the fight goes on, this guy's landing all these takedowns. He has really good top game, and let's not forget, Omar Moraes is 35 years old. He's 36 next month. So he's getting up there in age. He doesn't have that many fights. They're similar as far as fights go. It's a tough fight, though, because if you think for Moraes to win, he has to keep this on the feet, use his movement, because he is the better striker here. But obviously, Pearce, second, third round, he's going to be a dangerous opponent because he's going to have that cardio, that big cardio advantage. I'm going to go on the side where Moraes keeps it on the feet. I'm going to go on that side where I think that he is a strong guy. He has good posture in the ring. It's going to be hard to get takedowns. As you said, he's 100% on the takedowns. But I think that a lot of that has to do with his movement in the ring. He's not just standing there. He's moving around, angles, really good leg kicks. And if he can connect early, he can put Pearce out where his cardio won't be the decider here. So I'm going to go with Omar Morales here to win 2 rounds here. But I'm concerned Pearce is able to come on later on. That's his MO. That's how he fights. And his cardio is really good. So, but I'm going to go with the better fighter. I think is the better fighter. If he comes in with good cardio here, he should win this fight.
And I'll double down on the caution and say, for me, this is a pick, not necessarily a bet. But again, I think Omar Morales does get the job done. Let's move on to fight number 2. In that case, we have Matthew Semelsberger taking on Martin Sano. I won't spend too much time on this. Matt Semelsberger, decent stand-up, solid kickboxing, pretty good hands. He goes to the body as well, technical, picks his shots really well. Good combination with the hands, good striking defense. He gets his kicks in there as well. Good counter puncher, like we saw in that Jason Witt fight. Puts the pressure on. That's his style. Expect him to be coming forward. And he has shown me some takedown defense as well, again, which is always important to note. Only 3 UFC fights, but 100% takedown defense at this point in his UFC career. For Martin Sano, it's his UFC debut. He competed in Legacy and Bellator in the past. His last fight was February 2017. So that is, at this point, a 4.5-year layoff. Still only 30 years old. That's going to create a lot of question marks. Ring rust could be a real factor here. From his footage at the time in 2017 and prior to that, a little unorthodox on the feet. I don't think he's technically the cleanest fighter. He kind of lunges forward with his combinations. His opponents have timed him on takedowns. Decent counter puncher, I will give him that. And he does continue to come forward, kind of has that, toughness to him where no matter if you hit him, he will still kind of come forward. But again, I'll keep this short. Simply put, I think there's levels to this. And I think Semelsberger is at a higher level. There is always that unknown variable of what a fighter looks like almost 5 years later with a 5-year layoff from the sport. But unless Sano has completely transformed as a fighter, I just don't see Semelsberger having a problem here. So I see why he's the big favorite at -450. He's going to be my pick. He's probably going to be somebody that I put on a parlay as well. Matthew Semelsberger.
Yeah, I like Semelsberger here. He's definitely coming into his own. His loss versus Chaos Williams, he put up a good fight. And in that loss, I kind of learned a lot about him. He's not a quitter. He fights back. This guy is hard. And don't forget his wins, Carlton Minus and Jason Witt. So he's 2-1 in the UFC. And when he lost, he didn't get destroyed. And he's fighting a guy, Martin Santos, coming into the UFC with 2 losses on his record and a draw. So his last 3 fights, 1 draw, 2 losses. As you mentioned, he hasn't fought in a while, 2017. He's Nick Diaz's boy. So I think one of the stipulations was for him for Nick Diaz to fight, I guess. He got his homie on the card as well. So what it tells me is Semelsberger should win this easily. It should be an easy win for Semelsberger. I don't like the odds, but this should be an easy win. Semelsberger is definitely improving each fight. He's been in the cage recently, and he has the better wins. So I'm going to go Matt Semelsberger as well. And I think he's ultimately better everywhere, wherever the fight goes. Grappling, striking, I just think he's a better fighter everywhere. So Semelsberger is my pick to win that.
Speaking of Nick Diaz's boy, we're going to move on to fight number 3, Karl Roberson taking on Nick Maximov. I'll break this one down as well. Nick Maximov is making his UFC debut. He last competed November 2020, where he won on the Dana White Contender Series. Again, one of Diaz's boys. He trains with the Diaz brothers. So you're going to get from him in terms of his grappling, in terms of his cardio. Undefeated fighter, of course. We see his record there at 6-0. Competes in submission underground often. That definitely tells you something. And what's interesting is that he competed at heavyweight on Dana White Contender Series. He was only 209 pounds in that fight, but he did beat a fighter who was 54 pounds heavier than him. Otherwise, he has competed at 205. So it's going to be interesting to see how he performs here as a middleweight. Pretty strong ground game. He'll catch kicks. He'll look to take the fight to the ground. Strong top control, good ground and pound, good grappling to keep his opponents on the ground. At least from his last competition back in November. He was a brown belt at the time. Don't know if he's advanced since then, but of course, very legitimately credentialed as well. And of course, he's going up against the striker in Karl Roberson. We know he lost to Brendan Allen back in April, so 2-fight losing streak now at this point for Karl Roberson. We know he's a former pro kickboxer, definitely has that stand up to his game. Pretty patient, pretty methodical, kind of sits back, waits for the perfect time to pick a spot. Not the most active striker as a result. We see there 2.87 significant strikes landed per minute. Southpaw as well. So he'll often have the stand-up advantage, as obviously a lot of guys can't fight against southpaws. Good kicks, of course, good striking, but glaring weakness to his game, which will lead into my prediction. His weakness is his ground game. He doesn't have the best takedown defense, just 45%. And I think that makes it a very dangerous matchup for Karl Roberson. Although he'll definitely have the advantage on the feet, I think he's at a big disadvantage in the ground game. And with today's UFC, you almost have to have that ground game or at least takedown defense in order to be a reliable pick nowadays. So I know the odds are close. I know it's a newcomer. I know Karl Roberson is who Karl Roberson is. But Nick Maximov, bigger, stronger, sumptuously. If he's able to enforce that ground game in a relentless way, then again, that is Karl Roberson's biggest weakness. And I think that's what we're going to see. I think this is going to be one of those fights where Roberson maybe is looking good on the feet until Nick Maximov gets him on the ground, smothers him for 3 to 4 minutes, wins the round, wash, rinse, repeat for at least 2 of those 3 rounds, if not all 3 of them. So Nick Maximov is going to be my pick. I am going to go with the newcomer. Kind of an underdog. I mean, this is almost an even money. Karl Roberson at -115. Nick Maximov at -105. So I'm going to go with the slight underdog. Nick Maximov is my pick.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is a tough one, man, because as good as Maximov is with the grappling, this guy's stand-up is horrible, man. And if he gets caught by Roberson, he can easily get hurt. So there's that concern. But I think Roberson has to knock him out to win this because Maximov will spam the takedowns. On the Contender Series, he was fighting in the heavyweight division versus not a really good fighter, but the guy was like 260 pounds. And Maximov wasn't really a good fight, but considering the guy's size, he was able to implement some wrestling in that to get the win. Against Roberson, who doesn't have the best takedown defense, I expect Maximov's grappling to improve from the Contender Series. From 2020, he's had 4 grappling bouts, submission underground. So he's definitely active. He's definitely working. So I expect him to be better because he is 23 years old. So you got to know that he's going to be improving every fight. He's going to be getting stronger as he ages. So I like him as well in this spot. Concerned that he could get knocked out. His stand-up's horrible, but that should improve as well. But I think that's the Roberson's only way to win is if he knocks him out. And I think Maximov can get a submission, can win by decision, takedowns. I think he has just more ways. So I'm going to go Maximov as well to get this done.
Sounds good. Let's move on to fight number 4. In that case, we have Manon Fiorot taking on Mayra Bueno Silva. How do you feel about this one?
Yeah, this is a good fight, man. They're putting Manon Fiorot. I think they're looking at her as the next girl, and they're putting in her with a real solid contender in Bueno Silva. These Brazilian fighters, these female Brazilian fighters, they're not a joke. They come in seasoned. They come in very skilled. They have the grappling backgrounds. Some of them come in with high-level striking, and it's a problem for a lot of these other fighters. In this match, though, it's tough for me because I could see Bueno Silva latching up a guillotine or winning by a knockout, but I just don't think she's as quick as Manon Fiorot. I think Manon Fiorot is just more intense, puts on a bigger pace, more power. I think Manon Fiorot has the better striking in this fight, and I think her physicality would give her the advantage in the clinch. Also, maybe the wrestling. So she has that size, right? So I'm going to go Manon Fiorot here. I think the power is going to be a big thing here, and if she doesn't knock her out, Manon Fiorot can go rounds with that pace. And she's still green, but she has shown me that she does have high level striking, and she's learning the game. So I like Manon Fiorot. I believe in her. I think she is for real. I think it's not just hype. And her nickname's the Beast for a reason. So I think we're going to see it on Saturday. I like Manon Fiorot in this spot.
I'm gonna echo that pick. Manon Fiorot is gonna be my selection for this fight as well. Again, to your point, very dynamic striker. She has that sort of southpaw karate style. I know it's listed there as orthodox, but I've seen her fight southpaw more times than not. Again, that karate style, very dynamic. Moves very well laterally, and I think, like you mentioned earlier, that's going to be a big advantage for her. She's a hard target to hit unless you can effectively pressure her and cut the ring off. And again, she's very physically strong. Kind of reminds me of Valentina in that way, where she has a strong clinch. I've seen her be able to land takedowns, even against wrestlers. Her top control is pretty solid, and she can keep you on the ground positionally. We're looking at her takedown numbers, obviously very small sample size in the UFC, but almost 2 takedowns per fight, 100% accuracy, 100% defense to go along with it. With Bueno Silva, considered a striker, pretty solid striker, somewhat of a Muay Thai style. But again, I just feel like there are levels to this. And Fiorot, I think, is just at a higher level. I think she's sort of one of those up next type of fighters, especially in a fight that should stay on the feet, where I feel Fiorot is, again, you mentioned it, more aggressive, more quick, more dynamic. Maybe until Fiorot wants to take it down. I feel she may even have the advantage there as well. So I do feel Fiorot is just the better overall fighter. And as a result, she is going to be my pick as well. We're going to move on to fight number 5. We have Uros Medic taking on Jalin Turner to end off the early prelims. How do you feel about this one?
I like this fight. This is this is one of the better fights on this card. We got 2 guys that are going to likely strike, 2 high-level strikers. One guy's a giant, long reach. Jalin Turner, he's going to be the taller guy. He's usually the taller guy in every fight. But Uros Medic is not that short, so he's going to be a rangy striker as well. Both are good at fighting from distance. So this is a good fight. I think it's going to come down to literally who lands first, who lands that hard shot first, who lands that counter, who lands that combo first. I think someone's going to be put away. I think someone's getting knocked out in this fight. I got to make a choice. I think there's something special about Uros Medic. I'm not sure what it is. He just has that appearance that he's been doing this martial arts thing at a really young age. He's only, 7-0. But in this fight, I think that he would have the better wrestling if he wants to. But I doubt it's going there. But I think he also has I think he has the better striking than Jalin Turner. But Jalin Turner has an effective style in UFC because he has that long range. He's long, the long kicks. So he's going to be the longer guy. I can see him winning the fight. Odds are probably close here. But I just think Medic is technically the better striker, and this is going to be a stand-up fight unless I think Medic takes it to the ground. But I can see Jalin Turner pulling it off, but I'm going to go Medic. There's something about him. I think he's a guy to look out for that could be rising up the ranks.
Yeah, Medic, to your point, from an odds perspective, Medic at -125, Jalin Turner at +105. So definitely very close from the Vegas perspective. And, again, I will echo that Uros Medic pick, and I'll sort of get right to explaining my prediction a little bit further. I feel like, again, this fight should stay on the feet, to your point. Really high level striking match. You mentioned it already. Either of these guys can catch the other. And in some ways, it really is just about who catches who first. But I do feel Medic is more than likely to be the one that catches Turner first, as opposed to Turner catching Medic. And the reason why I feel that is I feel that the difference is that Medic is a lot faster on the feet, at least with his movement. I feel like Medic is a little bit more explosive as well. I think Turner wants a little bit more of a methodical, technical, high technique type of fight. Whereas with Medic, not only can he give you the technique and fight from that perspective, but he adds the explosiveness to that as well. He adds that sort of X factor of toughness, quickness, explosiveness, etc. And I think that is going to be the difference when it comes to these 2 guys' style of stand-up. So for that reason, I feel like Medic is going to be the one more likely to catch Turner. to your point, either guy can catch each other. This is not something where I'll say for sure Medic, but again, I do feel, and I will echo your point with this as well, I do feel really good about Medic as, you know, kind of one of those fighters in the middle ranks of the division that are a very dangerous threat and that can really, you know, start to build their name and potentially build themselves to a top 10, if not slightly above, beyond that, I should say. So Uros Medic is going to be my pick as well. I say all of that to say that. Again, I feel like he will be the more explosive of the two. And I feel like he will get the job done. But I like the little side mention that you said where this fight probably ends in a finish. So I am going to be curious to see what, you know, maybe under 2.5 rounds would look like as well, because there could be some value there. Why don't we move on to fight number 6? We have Roxanne Modafferi taking on Taila Santos. I will break this one down and I won't spend too much time on it. Roxanne Modafferi, she is 39 years old at this point. We know she is, and I've used this term before, one of those fighters that are a little bit more toughness than talent. Very durable, very active with her movement on the feet, especially early in the fight. A lot of head movement, a lot of jabs, but a bit of a herky-jerky, non-technical type of movement. Not the most technically talented fighter. And as a result, you know, she can get pretty lit up on the feet. Taila Santos, she beat Jalin Roberson back in December of last year. She's on a 2-fight win streak, throws a lot into her shots, really good stand-up, has that boxing, kickboxing, Muay Thai type of style, very powerful knees to the body. She loves the body kick as well. A strong Thai clinch as well. Not necessarily a cardio issue, but she definitely does slow down as the fight progresses. That could be the only issue with her. But what's interesting about this fight is Roxanne Modafferi, she lost to Viviana Araujo back in January. And I feel like you can really copy and paste the exact same script from that Roxanne Modafferi versus Viviana Araujo fight. Araujo looked great early. I think Santos will look great early. Modafferi is very durable. I think that'll happen again. And as the fight continues on, and as Araujo had slowed down, you know, not to say Modafferi was winning points necessarily, but again, Araujo slowed down to make the fight interesting. I think that could happen in this fight, but Taila Santos is just going to be way too much ahead for that to mean anything from a scorecard perspective. She's going to be my pick. I think she gets the job done. I'm not really threatened by Modafferi at all.
Man, you gotta. That's a tough one, man. Because you gotta look at Modafferi, man. She's been in this spot before. She's been the underdog. Couple times where she was a sizable underdog against Andrea Lee, Macy Barber, and I believe, and Antonina Shevchenko as well. She was a sizable underdog, talking like 3-1 type, 4-1 type stuff, and she goes in there and wins these fights, right? So she's the type of fighter that if she gets her striking going and she can mix it into her grappling, she bullies these girls with her grappling. She's a straightforward fighter, doesn't really use angles, doesn't really, she's just back and forth, right? And with that herky-jerky kicks, jabs, her head movement, everything has a weird look with her striking. So she does get lit up, of course, against a lot of these strikers. The thing with this fight, though, as she's done it before, but I don't think she's going to do it today and on Saturday. Taila Santos, really impressed with her. Ever since that close split decision loss to Mayra in 2019, February 2019, she's a different fighter. Her wrestling's much better. She's 17-1, and a lot of those fights are against cans early on. But still, she only has one loss out here, and she's a well-rounded fighter, has the grappling, has the wrestling, the much better striker. I wouldn't be surprised if she out-wrestles Roxanne Modafferi because she's able to shoot in quicker, because Roxanne's really slow, right? So I like Taila here to get this done. I think she's better almost everywhere except for the wrestling and the grappling, but I wouldn't be surprised if Santos beats her in those areas. So I got to go Taila Santos here to keep this on the feet and light her up. So Santos is my pick.
Sounds good. Let's move on. In that case, to fight number 7, we have Shamil Abdurakhimov taking on Chris Daukaus. This is a fight that was supposed to happen a couple of months ago, but here we are today with the fight happening. Abdurakhimov, he last fought 2019. That was a loss to Curtis Blades. Had a few canceled fights in 2020 as well. 39 years old, so he does have some names on his resume. Marcin Tybura, Andrei Arlovsky, Chase Sherman, Walt Harris. These are all guys that he's beat. You take a look at his record, they're pretty impressive at 20 wins, just 5 losses. Pretty light on the feet, a lot of in and out, a lot of fakes, level changes as well. Has that kickboxing style on the feet. Doesn't really throw a lot though. We see his significant strikes landed per minute only at 2.45. Just 1.23 takedowns per fight, just 24% on the accuracy side of things. He can land takedowns though, but I wouldn't necessarily call it a strength of his, just due to those numbers. And of course, it is the heavyweight division, so it is sort of harder to take guys down. With Chris Daukaus, on the other hand, we know that he beat Alexei Olenek. That was back in February. He's on a 4-fight win streak now, really making a lot of noise in this heavyweight division. 9 of his 11 wins are via KO TKO, so you have to absolutely respect his power. His size is going to be interesting in this one, although it won't matter too much because Shamil Abdurakhimov is not a heavyweight that comes in at the limit. He is somebody that comes under the limit, so I don't think the size will be too much of a concern for Chris Daukaus. But, in his fights, he's weighed 234, he's weighed 227, he's weighed 241. So it's always curious to see what Chris Daukaus comes in at, and that could have an impact in the fight against a heavier opponent. But again, Abdurakhimov is not necessarily that. In terms of Daukaus's game, solid hands, amazing hand speed, especially for the division, very accurate, pretty technically sound as well, has that pop, as I mentioned before. Before that last fight against Olenek, didn't really see his ground game tested, didn't know how he'd do against a higher level of competition. Especially a ground fighter. But after that Olenek fight, I was pretty satisfied. He didn't allow Olenek to take him down, didn't really expose himself to any sneaky submissions as well. That was the kind of one question mark that I had in his game. And as a result, I like Daukaus here. I think he can hurt Abdurakhimov here on the feet. I think he'll stop takedown attempts, and I think he can potentially get a finish here. I really like the minus 195 odds. This is probably something I do put on a parlay. Of course, it is always a heavyweight beware, but Chris Daukaus is my pick.
Yeah, I don't blame you, man. Shamil's 40 years old now. He lost to Curtis Blades, beat Marcin Tybura, Arlovsky, Chase Sherman, lost to Derek Lewis, was looking okay. Lost to Walt Harris, Anthony Hamilton. He beat Walt Harris, beat Anthony Hamilton. So this guy's been in there with a lot of guys. He's been in there with a lot of fighters. But I just feel the UFC is pushing Chris Daukaus. This is what they do. They feed you older fighters. Just like in his last fight, they gave him a 44-year-old Alexei Olenek. And now they're giving him a 40-year-old. So I think they want him to win. And I think he could win this fight. Keep this on the feet. I think as the fight goes on, Shamil's going to stop shooting for all those takedowns. And I just think that Daukaus has that power to get that knockout. I don't think he needs much time. I think this could be over in the first round. But Shamil is Russian. He does have wrestling. So I would be careful with this fight because I wouldn't be surprised if Shamil wins this. He's 20 wins, 5 losses. So this guy knows how to win the fight. He could fight everywhere. But I like Daukaus. I think his advantage is in the striking. I think most of this fight will be on the feet, and he should shine there. So Daukaus is my pick.
Sounds good. Let's move on to fight number 8. We have Dan Hooker taking on Nasrat Haqparast. Very interesting fight going on in the lightweight division. Dan Hooker lost to Michael Chandler back in January, back-to-back losses at this point, albeit Michael Chandler and Dustin Poirier. Can't be too mad at that. A pretty lengthy, rangy fighter. We know he's going to be tall for the division, but taking on an opponent in Nasrat that's not short necessarily. So won't be too much of an advantage there. With Dan Hooker, you're going to get a really good calf kick out of him, very effective, especially in that Poirier fight. If you go ahead and watch that, he was using it very effectively. And against Nasrat, especially with Nasrat's style, I can see the calf kick being very effective in this fight as well. Good movement. He can definitely avoid the punch, good combinations, sneaky counter striker. More than likely to keep the fight on the feet, of course. We see his takedown numbers there, just 0.72 per fight, only 34% accuracy. Similarly with Nasrat, 0.18 per fight, 16% accuracy. So I'm looking at two fighters that should keep this fight on the feet. Nasrat beat Rafa Garcia back in March. Muay Thai fighter, shows a bit more of a boxing style, in my opinion. A pretty sharp southpaw, good counter puncher, likes to stalk and control the pace, cuts the ring off pretty well, covers up pretty well defensively, although he can be hit. Definitely, he can engage with his opponents when needed. And I think he has, pretty high IQ combinations, good fakes, good feints, solid jab. This is a very difficult fight, in my opinion. I think that, again, a big concern that I have is Haqparast's ability to stop the calf kick. Since he does stand more in that boxing form, a little heavier on the feet, that could be something that Dan Hooker resorts to very often. But I mean, I'll keep the prediction relatively short here. I think Haqparast will maybe have better moments on the feet. I think, I think he's a little bit hungrier. I think he has a little bit more momentum going on for him. Hooker, I don't know. I mean, obviously he does still have it. Obviously he was at the top of the division and still is in a lot of ways. But I don't know, a little bit of a gut check here, but I'm leaning on the side of Nasrat Haqparast. I just think, again, better moments on the feet, a little bit more aggressive. I think he's going to use that to his advantage. Tough opponent. I like Nasrat. I like where he is, in this division, and he's going to be my pick ultimately. But this is more of a gut check than anything.
Yeah, this is a hard fight for me. Because with when I look at the fighters, I just think that this reminds me of the Max Holloway versus Calvin Kattar fight, where Max Holloway, the veteran, just showed that there was a level to this. And Hooker has that vibe for me that he might just show that he's on another level. But the thing is, when Hooker fought Dustin Poirier, I'm not sure what happened. Like, that was a brutal fight. That was one of the most brutal fights I've seen. And Dustin took a bit out of him that fight. He obviously isn't the same. The next fight, he got knocked out in the first real punch from Chandler. So I'm not sure where his jaw is at. So this is a fight that I'm not going to bet, period. Like, I'm just going to make a pick for the channel. Haqparast's mom, literally died, rest in peace, a week ago. So there might be extra motivation. I don't know if that's going to help him or not. But I don't want to base my pick off that. But I'm going to go with Haqparast because I'm not sure who's going to win this fight. I'm really not sure because I think Hooker is the better fighter, but I'm just not sure you can take the shots as he did before. Hooker may be motivated like Holloway was and come out on the next level. I wouldn't be surprised. But I'm going to throw this pick away, I guess. I'm going to go Haqparast, even though I know Hooker is the better guy. I just don't think Hooker is as durable as he used to.
Yeah, that's a pretty good breakdown, further analysis, kind of better worded version of what I was trying to say there. So let's move on to the final fight of the prelims. In that case, we have Marlon Moraes taking on Merab Dvalishvili. How do you feel about this one?
Merab all day. I think Marlon's live. For those open moments, he's one of those guys that can get a flash knockout, one shot knockout. He's done it many times with his knee, his foot. He's knocking people out with his hands. So he definitely has that in him where he has one opening, he can put your lights out. But Merab, that pace, that pressure, the wrestling, he'll take you down, you get back up, you'll keep doing it. I'm not sure Moraes can handle that. So I'm going to go Merab, who I know is going to be in shape, have really good cardio. He's going to keep this fight close. He's going to keep wrestling him. And I don't think Marlon Moraes can stop the wrestling at all. So I'm pretty confident in this pick because I think Marlon's only chance to win is a surprise knockout. Because I likely would see Merab winning the fight the whole time until that happens. But I see a dominant win, a 3-round decision, maybe a knockout. But I see Merab winning this fight here and making it look pretty easy.
Yeah, not really much for me to add to that. I completely agree with that. I think, against Dvalishvili, you have to note the takedown defense of the opponent, right? For Marlon Moraes, I mean, it's respectable. It's 66%, but that's not really good enough, in my opinion. Of course, that pace that you mentioned from Merab, I think that's going to be a problem for Moraes. The continuous, relentless takedown approach. And again, like you said, I think the best chance for Moraes to win is catching Merab on a counter. Maybe he shoots for a takedown and he catches a knee or a front kick or something crazy, some really well-timed counter strike. But unless you're Derek Lewis versus Curtis Blades, I'm not betting on the lucky shot landing. I'm betting on the fighter who's going to be winning 99% of the time. And I think that is going to be Merab at this point. So I actually do like the odds on this one, minus 260. It's not too bad for a fight that could be a very dominant performance by Merab. So Merab is going to be my pick as well. Speaking of some odds, let's take it to Vegas. Let's take a look at which fights we like. Let's start with an underdog. Which underdog are you considering on this card?
I'm going to take a look at Nick Maximov.
Nick Maximov, perfect. Okay, so let's take a look at that. That is a minus 110 pick 'em. But again, we have seen him at even money. We've seen him at minus 105. So it just depends on which betting platform you're using. But he is indeed the underdog. So Nick Maximov is definitely a legitimate pick there. In terms of my underdog picks, I am looking at Nick Maximov as well. And I'm also taking a look at, and I wonder if you forgot to say this, Nasrat Haqparast. He's a plus 137. So he's an underdog as well, and he is going to be a second underdog pick that I will provide on my end. In terms of favorite picks, I'll actually go first on this one. There's a few fights that I really like on this prelim here. I like Matthew Semelsberger. I like Manon Fiorot. I like Taila Santos. I like Chris Daukaus. And I like Merab. I mean, I really like all 5 of these fights. If I were to maybe trim it down from a parlay perspective, I'd probably take Taila Santos off of that parlay. So I'll stick with those 4 fights: Matthew Semelsberger, Manon Fiorot, Chris Daukaus, and Merab Dvalishvili. That's 4 fights plus 257. $100 will get $357 in return. Whereas for our bigger bettors, $250 will return $894. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'm going to roll with Matthews, Semelsberger, Manon Fiorot, Merab Dvalishvili, and Uros Medic.
I like that pick, definitely. So those 4, of course, a bit of a juicier parlay there, plus 320. $100 will return $420, and for our bigger bettors, $250 will return $1,050 in return. So let's end off on that note. As usual, please subscribe to the channel, participate in the comments, press the thumbs up, and hit that notification bell so you know when we are coming out with our prediction videos. This has been the prelim predictions for UFC 266, Volkanovski versus Ortega. He goes by the name of Zan. I go by the name of Pearce. We are Boxing MMA Picks, and as usual, let's get this money.
Let's do it.